So now I'd like to ask our Secretary General, Roberto Montella, to present his report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also want to join others in thanking the Kingdom of Morocco to host us here for the first time. I want to use this opportunity not to talk about all the activities that we have conducted from Luxembourg. I've written a report, it's been circulated a while ago, and we can get questions on this report. But I wanted to talk about first times. You know, this is the first time that we have a meeting here, and it's also the first time that in a standing committee I would like to get from the members of the standing committee, those who are still here, some guidance and some projections on where the Assembly is going and where we are in this moment. So my reflection with you would be where we are now, where we should be, and I would like to get clear guidance on where we should be. So this is the first time we're having a meeting in Morocco. It's a great thing. But there are many other first things that happened in the last 4 years. For the first time, we have an ad hoc committee on migration. Lombardi, Isabel Santos, Lingerie have led this committee with great leadership. For the first time, we have a committee on the fight against terrorism. For the first time, we have special representatives dealing with digitalization, disinformation, corruption, NGO and civil society, of course, all the other special reps that were there before. For the first time, we've made changes in the agenda for the winter meeting so that there is more space for debate. For the first time, all the contributions of the budgets have come in. Before, Uzbekistan was not participating in our meetings, so we were missing the Uzbeks' contribution. Now we have full contributions in our budget. For the first time, the biggest number of participants in these meetings, in the annual session and in election observation missions have taken place. For the first time, the relations with the governmental side of the OSCE is excellent. We have a great relationship with the governmental side, with the chairmanship. We've had, for the first time, joint press releases of yourself, myself, the Secretary General of the governmental side, and the chairman in office, especially on Albania. This is unprecedented in the history of the OSCE, not the OSCE, but all the OSCE. For the first time, the President of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly speaks twice to the Permanent Council at the beginning of the year to set the priorities, and after the annual session to say to the Ministerial Council what are the desiderata of the members of Parliament. For the first time, every week, if you read the news from Copenhagen, you will see every week there is a member of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, a Vice President, a Special Representative, who is either on the field or is either on the media or on record on issues of the OSCE. Committees, of course. For the first time, our relationship with the ODIHR and all the other partners on the elections are excellent. We have invited ODIHR colleagues to come to Copenhagen. We've done informal briefings, informal brainstormings with them. The relationship is excellent. Our leadership role is not disputed, and we work excellent. And the final reports that we come up with are now more focused, and I think they better service the interest of the participating states where we observe. For the first time, we have adopted the comprehensive guidelines on election observation. Of course, I know the NBA has some concerns with the part of these guidelines. We will address them, but for the first time, we have a document also that looks at the accountability of members of parliament when they observe elections. For the first time ever, we have observed elections in Mongolia, in Germany, in Italy, and next December in Uzbekistan. For the first time, in February, we will sign an MOU with the United Nations Office countering terrorism, an MOU that is between our Secretariat for the Committee on Terrorism and the UN. For the first time, we have adopted the media strategy. We have a new application. I am going to go on, I know but I just, the reason why I'm giving you all this list is because to get to a point which will come soon. For the first time, we have financial rules and regulations that regulate how the International Secretariat should manage its finances. And the audit, the Treasurer just talked about the audit is now done against a background of financial rules and regulations we have to abide to, not simply to the words of the Secretary General. I mean, there is, the auditor checks our accounts based on the rules that you have adopted. For the first time, we have staff rules our staff now as contracts and as modality on which they are employed by the Assembly. It's not a personal relationship between the Secretary General and the staff. For the first time, we've introduced a junior professional program last year. For the first time, we've signed an MOU with the Academy in Bishkek. And for the first time, we have secondments of staff. We have 3 Italians here. There are lots of Italians in the Secretariat, but they're paid by Italy, not by your budget. So for the first time, we have 3 secondments from Italy and 1 from Germany. And of course, if more countries want to second staff, they're welcome. And for the first time, all our OSCE staff is participating in trainings organized by the OSCE. Now, of course, we are all very proud of these results. I could have made this list before my re-election. Many people told me, but why are you making now the list? I mean, they've already re-elected you. What's the point of doing it now? You know, like you should have done it before in order to get support. But I'm not doing this list in order to get support, which I already got. And I think the best moment when you want to introduce reforms and ideas is when you have a longer-term perspective in front of you, which I do have now thanks to your support at the Standing Committee in Luxembourg. But the reason I am talking about this is because, of course, we are all very proud of these results. Those who have contributed to these results is, of course, the members, is, of course, all the special representatives, is a very active president, 24/7, always active on the OSCE agenda. And, of course, I will not fall into false modesty here, saying it's just others. Of course, I know that I have personally brought in some personal dynamics and personal contribution to these changes. But we are at the point now, Mr. President, where I need from this Standing Committee some guidance on what is the vision that the Assembly has to have and what is the kind of parliamentary assembly that you members, you are the leaders of this Assembly, what kind of parliamentary assembly you want. Until 2016, this Assembly used to have 3 statutory meetings, some election observation missions, and the president that would go from time to time to visit the country, a special rep who would from time to time make a statement. There were, of course, some seminars, some activities. But in the last 3 years, we have come up with a plethora of activities in all possible issues, digital agenda, fake news, migration, terrorism, NGO and civil society, of course, all the 3 committees. So we are present on the entire spectrum of the agenda and of the main issues that are debated. So I think it's very important when you reach a very high level. I am a sportsman. I know that you can easily get to the top of the chart when you are underdog team. The problem is then to remain. You know, you can beat once Real Madrid in Bernabeu, but you have to win the Champions League for many years ahead. What I would like to avoid is that, you know, we have reached very high. We are having a very good level of performance, but then, you know, we cannot manage to keep up this high level. And we have managed to keep up this very good high level because the machine that supports all of this, the Secretariat, it's here, it's all here and few people who are behind the scenes making sure that the microphones work and the documents are on the table, and some colleagues in Vienna and Copenhagen who didn't come. But this is the International Secretariat. So in order to make all of these still sustainable, we have to be a little more creative of how we continue. We've managed so far because we have stretched a little bit our resources. Many people are happy with what we do in migration and in the fight against terrorism, but you see here Farima and Marco, who very often have been quoted in your committee meetings. They have self-invented themselves as expert in migration or in terrorism by, self-teaching themselves and providing support, ideas, speaking points, organizing meetings. But they are not expert in these issues. We do not have an expert on corruption. We do not have an expert in the Secretariat on the digital agenda or on fake news. It's colleagues that I have appointed that will make their homework, they will study, they will research and try to provide support to members. But I think what is very important is that the Standing Committee decides on what is the vision that you want for this Assembly. Do we want the Assembly as it was, or do we want it as it is now, but with, my advice would be, with some adjustments. And the adjustments, and this is what I would propose to the Standing Committee, is to a little bit rationalize and prioritize what we want to do. I think Lord Bonas talked about the role of the Bureau and the responsibility that the Bureau should have, but also the Standing Committee is the leading body of this Assembly. We should be able, maybe at the Bureau meeting at the beginning of the season, let's say, at the ministerial meeting, to set the priorities for the incoming year. So the Bureau should say to the Assembly and to the International Secretariat, the priorities are to work on terrorism, on migration, and on climate change. And the International Secretariat has an obligation to support whoever in the committees, the special representatives, the experts who are working on these issues to support those issues. But of course, if we want to maintain members working on other issues, the International Secretariat, to the extent possible that the resources allow, human and financial resources, the International Secretariat will come in and step up and support. But it must be very clear what is the priority that the Bureau, that the leadership gives to the International Secretariat. So I also have my own responsibility, of course, which is to streamline the resources that are currently available. And mind, I'm not complaining that I don't have enough human resources or enough money. You just increased our budget last July. So my idea is to, of course, streamline, and you will see in my report I've already made a little restructuring of the International Secretariat, thus servicing better this new trend that is in the Assembly. But I think it's very important that there is also the political backing to these actions that I'm about to take, and there should be also political backing to this new course that the Assembly is taking, and the Bureau should do this at the end of the year or the beginning of the new year. For the future, next year, talking about activities, we will probably have a record high number of election observation missions. Probably we will have 11 election observation missions next year in 2020. Tajikistan, Serbia, Belarus, Montenegro, Kyrgyzstan, Moldova, the US, Georgia, Azerbaijan, again Tajikistan presidential, and North Macedonia. This is all next year. In order to have an election observation mission, normally I send a need assessment mission. Andreas Baker is going next week to Tajikistan for 4 days with the ODIHR to do a need assessment mission. Then we go on a pre-electoral visit with the president. Then we send a mission, and sometimes we do a follow-up mission. If you multiply these 11 times, and the election department here is Andreas, Irina, and another person, and of course, all our staff providing support to an election observation. But in a year when you have 11 election observation missions, we either cut some elections or we cut some other activities, or we try to find some creative ways in order to support all these activities. I will leave it to you also to ask questions and to give me some guidance on this, but I don't want to end my statement before thanking 3 members that I know of who are leaving this Assembly with this meeting, and probably at the concluding plenary tomorrow, they will also be recognized more in a more formal plenary. But I would like to thank Alan Farrell for his service in our Assembly. Alan especially was important for my own start as Secretary General here by making sure that the financial rules that I later on introduced would be something very much bedrocked into documents that exist in the OSCE and the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. So thank you very much, Alan, for making sure that we stay very much online with our finances. Nilza Desena is also leaving our Assembly. She's not running in the elections on this Sunday in Portugal. And Nahima Landry, she's leaving our Assembly. She's she's still a member of Parliament, but there will be another Belgium delegation, so she's leaving the Committee on Terrorism. And of course, I knew about that. And of course, Margareta Kenenilen will leave our Assembly with this meeting, but she will still be involved in other meetings. So that's why, in Vienna, okay, in Vienna. So that's why. But thank you very much for these three members who have been important in our assembly, and we will try to give you a proper farewell tomorrow. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you, dear Roberto. Dear Alan, dear Nahima, and dear Nilsa. So you've been a great leaders and friends to all of us, and we hope that you will keep those ties with us. You promised that, and we wish you all the best. As I said, we will address this issue at the end of the session too. There are questions or some, yeah, please, Vice President Henriksson, she'd like to respond, please.
Yes. Thank you very much, President, and dear colleagues. I would like to commend you and your Secretary General for your continued activities and efforts to make the PR more visible. They strengthen the standing of our Assembly and make a difference to the way our recommendations are received by the OSCE executive structures. And we have done many things for the first time. That is very good. But we have also some goals we have decided upon for many years ago that is not going so well. And I would like to raise two aspects concerning gender equality in our Assembly. First, the gender imbalance in our panelists and in the representation from the International Secretariat in our plenary sessions. And second, as it is perceived, total lack of gender equality in our media outreach. The panelists at this autumn meeting are very poor regarding gender equality. In Luxembourg, the situation was approximately the same, and we cannot accept this. The OSCE PA in 2011 adopted a resolution on women's representation at the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, noting the poor gender balance and encouraging the improvement of this balance. I would also like to draw your attention to the gender balance report launched in Luxembourg by Dr. Hedy Fry, telling a similar story tale. I have counted the horrible low woman representation in our session during the last years, and I'm sorry to state that the occasions where the number of male and female panelists are equal are few and far between. That's my experience. If we are to enhance gender equality, the practice must end. Our goal must be equal gender representation when it comes to panelists and who is representing the International Secretariat at the high table. In a world where the most important positions, ministers, head of state, etc., still are held by men, it is paramount that there is a similar overrepresentation of women amongst the panelists and other participants. Now, to our Assembly's new media strategy. We have improved our ability to convey what we are doing, which is very good, because media content shapes opinion, attitudes, and ideas. But when we look at what is presented in the photos of our activities and meetings, it is almost all about men. Active men, with a very few exceptions. The President talking to heads of state, government ministers, and other important interlocutors. It is great that the President meets these people and that it is communicated. No doubt about that. But if we are to be a gender-balanced organization, we need to ensure gender balance also here, and we need to be aware of that unbalance we find. And it is not only about counting the number of men and women. Gender equality in media is also about how women are presented in the media, about active and passive people in the photos. I have dived into Flickr albums from our last sessions and activities, and I'm sorry to say this, there are many active men and very, very few active women. If we are to solve this, we have to make sure the presidents meet women in power and with power on every journey and visit, and that this becomes a part of our equality and media strategy. I would encourage this Assembly to adopt similar standards as the Council of Europe on gender equality and media. And I will also propose, Mr. President, to ask you and the Secretariat to include and adopt in your reports a separate paragraph where our equality strategy is addressed, including concrete follow-up points and what is remaining. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Kari. I think, yeah, there are good points. We also respond, as I was mentioned also a few times, not a negative context and a positive, that's good, but I will tell you what I think. Another question? Okay, please, Roberto.
Thank you very much, Kerry, for raising the point. Of course, this is something that I have very much in mind. Just be aware that I have inherited a situation here, so it's not easy to transform the International Secretariat in a totally gender-balanced situation when the picture was not totally gender-balanced when I took over this position. But as far as I'm concerned, from the moment I took over this position, I have empowered some of the staff. For example, as soon as I started, I was the director of the presidential administration. I appointed a woman to this position as director of presidential administration. The election department was headed by Irina Sabashuk as soon as I came to this position. So I have appointed people in high positions as soon as I took over this position. But it will take time, until some let's say, turnover of staff happens, and then we will take on this. The good news is that we have recently hired a new staff from France, Stéphanie, a woman. We are in the process of hiring a media person. Most probably it will be a woman. So this will bring out numbers. Our current numbers are, out of 22, we have 7 women in the Secretariat. But I understand you were not talking about how the International Secretariat is conducting every day. You are mainly focused on this event here. And the picture speaks for itself, so I am not going to argue that it is indeed very imbalanced, but unfortunately not everybody was here. Yes, but the other important thing that I would like to, I don't know if to take credit for, but having contributed, is the brighter picture in terms of leadership for election observation missions. We've done recently an analysis of how many members have been appointed, special representatives, special coordinators, and head of delegations, and then we have total gender balance, in some cases an imbalance in favor of women, which is, of course, a positive picture. But that is where we could influence, because there the International Secretariat makes suggestions of names to the leadership, and the leadership appoints, So on where we can, we have. But I mean, I cannot drastically overnight, say to some male, leave the room for some ladies in the Secretariat. Another point which I take on board is your request to have an equality strategy you meant in my regular report. That's definitely something we can do. I will have a sort of an update every time from the last meeting on where we are on gender balance in terms of of course, there is not such a vast turnover in the International Secretariat from meeting to meeting, but where we are in terms of appointment. Also, the recent appointments of special representatives were ladies. So we're working in that direction, but I absolutely have this issue very close to my heart, and I'll do everything I can from my perspective to implement.